You have done exceedingly well, moderator sir. We've got about 10 to 15 minutes time. But before we start, I have a question, not a thought which has come to my mind. You know, it was very heartening to note that 5 years ago, we used to think the solar power will never become viable for a consumer. And today we find it is a competitor to a normal source of power. Now, I have a thought in my mind that what about hydrogen as a energy source? Hydrogen-based power plant. You know, we have discussed this earlier also. I remember I myself used to discuss a few years ago, and there was a committee formed by the Ministry of Power under the chairmanship of Ratan Tata, because hydrogen is available abundantly as water. So why are we not trying for special technology on electrolysis to produce hydrogen from water, just as we've done for the solar cell? You know, that thought came to my mind. When I hear that new technology in polysilicon, why not some new technology in electrolysis? Because water is abundant, it's available. Why not use hydrogen as a power source? Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would like to take that question because it's a discussion that's also quite vibrant in Germany at the moment. There it's not hydrogen, but more power to gas. So first hydrogen is produced in an electrolysis, and then in a methanization process you produce methane, because it's much easier to store, it's much nicer than the very small hydrogen atom, and you can just inject it in the existing natural gas infrastructure. But if you look carefully what need of storage we have now and in the future, you see with the decreasing share of renewable energies. In the beginning, you can just build renewable energies. That works in small systems till 10%, in larger systems till 20%, Germany 25%, because we use a grid and the pumped hydro in Norway and Switzerland. But then you have a phase transition, and then you need short-term storage because of the lack of system services. And short-term storage could be flywheels. Pumped hydro is difficult because they're not always running, and they have some minutes to start running. So you need something that's online every day, every hour, and that can just be switched on in the brink of a second. And that's, for example, battery storage. And then we get to the next phase transition at about 60–70% renewable share, when these storage systems needs to get larger and larger and more expensive. And then we come to long-term storage, like power to gas or like first hydrogen and so on. So we have these different regimes: no storage, short-term storage, and long-term storage. And for Germany, it's estimated that we need these long-term storage maybe in 20 years, but not within the next 15 years.
You know, injecting hydrogen in a diesel engine or petrol engine as a catalyst increases the efficiency of the petrol engine, diesel engine. It can be used for transportation ministry also. Hydrogen is such a valuable fuel, not only for producing power through hydrogen engines, but also helps diesel engine, petrol engine more efficient. So what my question was, in India, it was a hot topic a few years ago, but now it has gradually died down. So I wanted to know if any of the panelists know why it has died down, what has happened to the special committee formed by the Ministry of Power. We don't hear much about that.
I can answer this,
Please,
not exactly what you are asking. Hydrogen storage and hydrogen as an energy carrier, there are two different things. Hydrogen as an energy carrier would require a lot of infrastructure.
I'm not talking about fuel cell. I'm not talking hydrogen.
So, no. If you're talking about a hydrogen as a storage, using a renewable energy
hydrogen as a
source,
gas to be used as a source of producing power through hydrogen engines.
Yeah.
No, through hydrogen engines. You inject hydrogen.
Engines will have a little lower efficiency at a lower level, because unless you go to a megawatt scale, if you talk about, let's say, sub-kilowatt scale, if you can build these fuel cells and add that particular thing where you can get about 47 to 48% efficiency of energy conversion back, that would be probably better way. That means you have a PV, you have an electrolyzer, you have a compressed storage, you can do it about 110 bar, and then when you convert it to a fuel cell, you will find that the kilowatt hour storage will be far less than a lithium-ion batteries. Only thing is that there is a certain amount of energy consumption that is a kind of a self-limiting thing, because this whole thing, the energy loss is about 28% as compared to 15% in the battery. If you are able to plug that particular loss in your electrolyzer and the fuel cell and don't go for a compressed system because you have to compress it and certain amount of energy is consumed, then probably these kind of a storage systems will become an initial introduction to hydrogen, and maybe later on that hydrogen can be used to carry through a hydrogen infrastructure. So right now it can be used at the point where you want to shift it by, let's say, morning you are generating the solar.
Dr. Sonde, my question was slightly different. I just want to know from you. energy, no, the question, Dr. Rai, was on energy balancing. Because when you produce energy, you need input of energy in the water to produce hydrogen. The question was energy input and energy output. My energy input has to be less than energy output. That's what's my question. How can we have a technology where the energy output is more than the energy input? Efficiency of energy. That is the main thing, not the storage, production of hydrogen. Anyway, carry on, please.
Any other, yeah, please.
My name is Giri. Very inspired by this question of hydrogen. I have an opportunity in my 50 years career to work with gaseous hydrogen, liquid hydrogen, and hydropower. Recently, I commissioned a small hydropower project of my own in Himachal Pradesh. And I have a plan which is being supported by MNRE. And the plan is simply this. In the monsoon seasons, when you produce so much of power from hydro station, you don't know what to do. I would be putting in an electrolyzer, compressing that using my old experience to very high pressures and storing into a battery into the mountains. And thereafter, using the mules to transport 1.5 cubic meters of hydrogen cylinders to individual homes, which will be provided with a fuel cell. No wires, no commercial losses, no billing mismanagement, and on the whole, the entire system will give me electricity at less than 4 rupees a unit at the consuming point. Now, the next scale up of this would be, which I hope will happen in 2 years' time, will be to use that hydrogen for local mountain transportation. Again, no pollution. So it's a potentially good idea. It is workable. I'm aware of the power to gas and gas to power program in Germany, and I do wish to draw upon that at a later stage. But if this is done on all the small hydros in the interiors of the country, you won't need this great mesh of wires and mesh of the commercial losses and others. There's very little capital cost to it. If you come to do the cash flow planning, you'll realize that the amount of deposits you'll get for the cylinders that will carry hydrogen will probably fund half of your project. So this is in the pipeline, the blueprint is drawn up, MNRE is considering that, and I do hope that in 3 to 4 years' time, I would be able to demonstrate this to the nation, that this is doable, eminently. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Mike?
I just want to know whether any one of you can throw some light on what's happening on the graphene batteries front. Graphene batteries.
Yeah, there are only news items that are coming up now. Graphene is being used as a membrane over the cathode element, and I think a few Korean companies are trying out to use in a lithium-ion battery.
Cathode, because we have been reading about graphene being used to make capacitors,
Okay.
which will be used for energy storage. So,
Okay.
anything on that?
I'm not sure. I'm aware of the lithium-ion battery now being, the cathode being modified with a graphene-based cathode. Yeah.
Just for this, there are a big myriad of battery chemistries, and there's a lot of development in this area with new chemistries or new versions of lithium-ion batteries. And lithium-ion battery is currently the most advanced technology. It's commercial since early 90s when Sony started really mass scaling it. We have a lot of track record from mobile phones and laptops where these batteries are used extensively. And therefore, these batteries have the best quality for commercial applications. The new chemistries will definitely come up in the next years. And if they manage to be cost competitive and or provide better performances, it's something we will integrate in our systems for sure, and we're closely monitoring this.
Are there any questions? Microphone.
Hello.
Yeah, just a thought that I wanted to share with you. In this country, whenever we start a new program, it is more like a fad. So we say that, okay, solar energy, 75 gigawatt, and everybody is talking about it. I think some are very uncomfortable questions which were raised by Mr. Krishnaswamy, which have not been answered. Mr. Prakash was talking about saying that the battery storage cost would be less than, I mean, if you use the batteries, the cost would be less than the cost of the generator, the power which is produced through the generator. But that is not the solution. We have to think of as to how it would be competitive in terms of the thermal power. And that is the kind of work that needs to be done. And unfortunately, what I see is that we talk of new technologies, new theories, without bothering about how will it actually turn out to be the cost competitive, and whether or not it is necessarily to be grid connected. Mr. Anup Singh talked about the off-grid solutions, and there is probably a need to talk about and pursue the off-grid solutions rather than grid connected and then talk of the grid parity with the storage, which in my opinion is an impossibility.
Since I missed to comment on some other aspects of off-grid, I think we need to realize something that we say there are certain fundamental rights for each citizen. Scandinavian countries have, some of them have already moved to have access to, I think, if I don't remember, it was how many Mbps of internet as a fundamental right, and that's their target, every household. What we currently are only planning is to electrify each household, not saying how much he will be able to consume. We should really see off-grid as a kind of a interim solution where ultimately, at least in most part of those, even these rural areas, the grid will ultimately reach here. From a variety of experiences, I can tell you, this does not work. It is not operationally, financially sustainable. So we proposed a model a few years ago based on some work we had done on these off-grid or informal markets, what I call them, is we designed these off-grid systems with a tripartite agreement with the regulator and the utility being in place. This will remain as an off-grid till it reaches there. So you sign a PPA today as of today. Whenever the grid reaches there, this system should become subsumed by the grid. Otherwise, we just cannot say that those people will have just 4 hours of supply and we'll continue to enjoy 24 hours all through our life. I think that's really unfair.
Can I? Yes. On these off-grid solutions, it is very easy to say off-grid, and people think that the grid is not to be spread and then expenditure has not to be made. But no one is focusing on, this price has always been an issue even in the grid connected. Now off-grid, how are we going to meet with the batteries? In the morning session, somebody said I can sell this power at 20 rupees or 19 rupees and all that. So who has to bear this cost? Have you thought about it? And do you have a suggestion to be made to the government? Who has to subsidize this? Already we are saying that the rural and far-flung areas, poor people, they cannot afford. How will they afford this high price of power? And who has to bear this?
Very quickly, there was another idea on my pages, amongst other them. This is something we haven't tried. There are sometimes good experiences which are available elsewhere in different sectors. That is one of them was universal service obligation in the telecom. We haven't tried that, actually something similar in the
telecom is different, you know.
No,
cost is a very...
It's financially the same thing. Currently we are saying somebody will come, he will do it on his basis because he doesn't need license, he will do it. Right, and then he will charge something. And still there is regulatory unclarity about whether those charges are going to be regulated by somebody or not. We are not yet sure. As of now, everything is open.
No, cost has to be there.
But if you bring it to a competitive USO based
You mentioned batteries and cost, etc. Can someone give an idea with the batteries how much it costs?
No, that's what I'm suggesting is, if you want that to happen, currently everybody will work on a cost plus basis. Nobody is doing charity here. But if you bring this element of competition as it happened in the USO, in the telecom sector, we could have done that something similar in the rural electrification as well. We didn't do that. If you look at rural electrification the way it was done in Thailand, you will be surprised at how nicely they have done it. But we didn't do that.
Anup Singh, you see, you have no answer to this now. But how can we spread this thing, that off-grid solution and solar and all? This is not feasible.
That's what I also said. Ultimately, the grid has to reach most parts.
No, grid has to reach or not. This, the solar along with the batteries is unviable solution.
And nobody can bear that cost. So theoretically, everything is possible. You can extract from the environmental heat, you can convert this to power, but at what cost is the question? Affordability is the question.
Sir, what I'm feeling is that if you look at only electricity, you are absolutely right. But along with the electricity, see, they use the LPG, because today rural people are using for their cooking purposes the gas and everything. Now, if you're able to have, in a small community, I'm not talking about more than 200 families, if you're able to supply them the gas also from this kind of hybrid, which is the renewable energy, then, because see, they will pay for this kind of, like the way they're ready to pay for a mobile chargers on a prepaid basis, they are able to pay this kind of thing. And if there are certain, like, telecom towers, or if there is some kind of industrial small cottage sector which is there, because you need to understand that there has to be certain cross-subsidization will always have to happen in India, unfortunately. So probably that, I'm not saying that that will happen, may be a solution for an off-grid. That means, I'm going back to my favorite about don't only generate electricity. Generate something which is also required by them, which they can afford. A cold storage they can afford because they know that their particular perishable items, if they're able to get a larger one by getting a continuous power or a thermal way convert the cold energy, maybe they'll be able to afford. So look at what are his economical parameters, which will make him affordable, and then make whatever power as the last mile in this whole sector, and maybe, I'm just being a little more that may be a viable model.
I think we have a signal.
With the permission, no, with the permission of you, sir, with the permission of you, can we declare this, your permission, can we declare the session closed? Thank you all very much. Please join me in giving a big round of applause to our speakers, the panelists, and the moderator. Thank you, sir.